Have you encountered a manual process before and thought there has to be a better way? In this episode, we interview Gustaf Gyllensporre, founder of Condo Cube, a PropTech company that helps real estate agents and developers close more condo deals. Gustaf started as a commercial real estate analyst, and as he learned the business and gathered information on deals, he quickly became frustrated at how manual the process was. Gustaf learned programming while on the job to streamline the process of gathering information and delivering insights. Today, he has taken his experience to become a founder of his own company. So whether you are an aspiring entrepreneur or a real estate tech enthusiast, this is an episode you can't miss. All right, let's get started. Hey, Gustaf, welcome to the show. So happy to have you here.
Thank you, Ariel. Happy to be here too.
It's always great hearing from a fellow PropTech founder. And before we get into Condo Cube, how you started it, would love to hear a little bit more about your background, how you got into tech, and ultimately what made you found this company.
Absolutely. So I moved in 2016 to Miami from Sweden to study real estate. So I did both the bachelor's and the master's at the Florida International University. And after I graduated, I worked as a real estate analyst for different brokerages in Miami. And like many real estate professionals in Miami or real estate analysts, I was able to do broker sales in my free time, so to speak. So I got a lot of exposure to condo transactions, from the analysis to development feasibility, working with developers, and the core of sale and the transaction part. And that's when I realized I was working with a lot of different parties and producing a lot of reports, getting a lot of data. It was quite frustrating for me because a lot of my tasks I felt could be automated. They were very tedious, and they could sometimes be repetitive. So that sort of inspired me to get into the track of automation. How can I automate this, And that prompted me to learn how to program, specifically with Python, which is a great programming language specifically for automation. And I learned basically how I could automate the stuff that I was already doing, which was really cool. It obviously saved me a lot of time. And after a while, I realized that, these tools that I developed for myself, I'm sure there's other real estate professionals out there, especially in Miami, that are facing the same problems I have. And that prompted me to actually release these tools in a platform called Condo Cube. So Condo Cube is a condo intelligence platform to help real estate professionals currently in Miami to close and procure more condo deals by looking at historical condo sales data and breaking it down easily. So that's sort of a little bit about my whole story there and how I started this business.
That is incredible. You dived into educationally learning about real estate, took it into your full-time career, and then realized, there are certain aspects of this that I feel like are tedious, not allowing me to move fast enough. And then self-taught yourself how to program and ultimately created tools and realized that you could make this an even better experience for other folks out there investing in condos, right?
Exactly.
And how did you go from someone who knew nothing about programming to learning Python? What was that journey like?
It was super fun, I must say. So like a lot of people, I tried to program before this. I feel like a lot of people have at least tried at some point because it's something that's regarded as, it's a very good field to work in. And I feel like a lot of people just try it and it doesn't stick. And it didn't stick for me at least like 3 or 4 times. What was different was that before, I was following tutorials on how to do this, how to create a calculator, etc., all these boring things. It wasn't until I actually had a problem that I really wanted to solve, that I knew if I solved this problem, it would really improve my quality of life. And that's, that driving force really prompted me to actually, I guess, learn it. And when I say learn is now I was actually trying to figure out the solution to my own problem rather than going through pre-made projects. And that allowed me to break down my problem in different steps, and eventually, yeah, it was just easier. It wasn't easy, but it was definitely easier step by step to it was like building blocks, and like
Yeah.
I could fix each part of the problem until I had a solution, and then eventually, you're doing all this coding, eventually it's just going to click for you, and then you know how to code.
I love it. And you make such a great call out that you can follow these tutorials, for example, of pre-made projects, which is still useful, but until you apply it to your own project, that's when like the learning just goes off the chart there. And
Absolutely.
yeah, it's similar to, say, like a contractor when building a house. Like you probably have to be an apprentice, understand the steps that are required, but eventually you kind of start to understand, okay, I'm going to need to add this piece of framing in this area of the house. And once I do that, the next step will be this. And that's the same thing with programming. Your mind just continues to try to solve the next problem. So as you're building out these tools, like what is the landscape for condos in Miami? Like who's buying these condos? Are they plentiful? Is there a small amount? What does the overall landscape look like?
So Miami is a unique market because it's such an attractive destination internationally and also within the US, especially after COVID. And it's also regarded as sort of a safe haven when there's trouble elsewhere in the world, specifically in Latin America, for example, with the economic downturn in Venezuela. A lot of Venezuelans go to Miami or Madrid to park their money in oftentimes condos, essentially. So it's a very international market, a lot of foreign investors that purchase condos, and a lot of them, uh, they purchase them, well, at least a lot before they used to purchase them and can't let them sit. And that's also what Florida is known for, is a place where there's a lot of empty homes that people just own for the
Yeah.
capital appreciation. But now, since the rents in Miami have shot up so quickly and so drastically, I feel like there's been a shift, and more people are taking advantage of renting out these condos. Uh, so yeah, that's a bit about the condo markets in Miami. And what what falls in Miami is it's such a high in demand place to live in. A lot of people want to move there. There's Florida obviously has a lot of benefits, very pro business climate. The weather is of course really great compared to other places in the US. So there's a lot of incentives to move to South Florida or Miami in particular, and it attracts a lot of demand from the rest of the US. And this has created, well, there's a lot of development going on in Miami. I mean, I feel like every time I go back there, I don't live there anymore, but the skyline looks completely different because there's just new buildings and they look more amazing than ever. So it feels like every time I go back, it's almost a new city.
I completely
Um,
agree.
Despite all this development, it seems like it's still not enough supply for the demand out there.
Yeah, and it's a tricky problem that, you've been able to highlight that it's not just investors, say, in the US, but Miami has that uniqueness of the international appeal. And now with it being even more of a hotspot than it was before, these investors do have that problem that they're facing of, well, what should I rent out these condos for if I'm going to do so? So is that the main problem that Condo Cube solves? Or if you could kind of give it a high level, what are maybe the top 1 to 3 problems that you solve today?
Yeah, absolutely. So the problem of how much should I rent my condo for is certainly a problem that I'm trying to solve. It's in a later phase of the product though, because right now I'm just dealing with the sales data. So it's more about, if I am a real estate agent, let's say I have a listing in a certain condo building, or I have a buyer that wants to live in an apartment in Miami, they want to purchase, then that would be a condo, right? So it's more about looking through the existing inventory in the market, looking at the historical transactions, seeing what is selling and why is it selling, to come to a realistic and good price for your buyer or your seller. And essentially, so the problem I realized, because I was working with a lot of real estate agents, is real estate agents are not very technical people, and they're good at selling, which is great because, you know, that's their job. Their job isn't really to crunch numbers. That's why they would pay people like me, an analyst, to do it for them. So the core feature of my platform is essentially breaking down these complex analyses for condo deals, which I would make, and display them in a way that, in an interface that's easily accessible to even the least technical real estate agents, so that they can empower their clients and come to a realistic price, for example, or even help them procure new condo deals by finding new leads in the market.
I love that. Empowering agents with the right tooling so they could focus on what's most important, which is their sales skills, building relationships, and have that other piece already in the best form for them. So with that, I'd love to get an overview of Condo Cube live. So would you mind sharing your screen, Gustaf, with us?
Yeah, no problem at all. Right. So basically what Condo Cube is at the core is a database of all condo sales for most condo buildings in the popular submarkets in Miami. We're starting off in Miami, of course, with the idea to expand to the Tri-County area, to the whole state of Florida, and eventually throughout the United States. So I have it broken down in submarkets here. So we have these different submarkets in Miami. One of the hottest ones is always Brickell. When I do demos, I'll ask people, you know, is there a particular market you want to let? They always say Brickell, without fail, 100% of the time, because it's just such an interesting market. It's in the center of Miami, financial district, a lot of upscale dining and entertainment there. So of course, a very interesting area that a lot of people want to live in. And so this is what I call the submarket page, where you'll have an overview of the condo sales volume throughout the years in the submarket. And this is looking at qualified sales that are sourced directly from the property appraiser of Miami-Dade. And this is important for two reasons to highlight. The first one being that, let's say if we were to get the data from the MLS, which a lot of agents currently do, is they try to get the data from the MLS because it's somewhat easy to do. But that only includes on-market sales. So you're missing out on off-market sales, which is can be very significant. And by getting it straight from Miami-Dade property records, which everything by law has to be recorded there, even if it's on or off market, we include all those sales. And of course, the data comes with a higher degree of accuracy than the MLS. Anyone who's been on the MLS, especially in Miami, will know that there's questionable accuracy in some of the data and the listings there. You know, like some of the price per square foot be completely off because a lot of these agents they're having to put this in. And again, agents don't want to do this. It's not their job. They want to be on the phone talking to their client. They don't want to fill out the MLS sheet. So I understand. So yeah, this is sourced from those sales, and we do some cleanup on the sales. For example, look at the qualification description. Some sales are, you know, minimum consideration. It can be a condo that traded hands for, let's say, $500. That's not a sale we're going to count. So we already do some pre-filtering. So the analysts or the agents using the software don't have to do that, which they would have to do anyways, because they really skew the results of the analysis. And yes, so here we have the buildings in Brickell. And you can see just a quick little overview of their build, the floors, and the units. This particularly useful for a developer who wants to see, you know, the existing supply in the market, how old are the buildings, what's the typical floor or unit count, etc. It can really help them in their feasibility analysis, you know, like how many floors should we build, how many units should we build, what's the market, what does the market look like, are there a lot of old buildings, etc. So if we go on SS Lux, I really like this building, one of my favorite buildings in Miami. it brings you to the overview page. So the core meat and potatoes of Condo Cube is this data interface showing all these analyses and graphs. And it's broken down into 4 tabs. This is the overview, which is a collection of what I would consider the most interesting widgets and data, etc. And then there's 3 other tabs, which I will go into in a moment. But here you can get a quick grasp of what's going on in the building. You'll see the sales volume broken down by the number of beds. Here you'll also be able to see how many units sold, essentially. You'll see important metrics like price per square foot, which any real estate agent that's serious, about coming to a real valuation, they'll use price per square foot a lot. So that's a very important metric to show. We also break down price per square foot by floor. These are the top 7 floors in the building. You can expand this to compare the different floors in the building and see what's selling. And what's really cool is for all of these bars, you can click on them and it's going to pull up all the sales that make up that bar. So you can really look and analyze and understand what is selling and why it's selling. So here you'll have all the sales, and you also see the buyer and the seller, which is really cool.
I love this aspect deeper. So it allows you to see the top level trends, but also get detailed within only a click of a button. So I love that aspect of your product.
Yeah, I love to hear it. A key goal in developing this is, of course, to make it very accessible and to the least technical realtors, but I also want to empower them to go a bit deeper, so as to open this up and look at the sales themselves and kind of prompt them to take that extra step in the analysis way if they want to, of course. Mm-hmm. So that's why I provide them with that feature. And remember I said before that, a core customer would be someone who has, for example, a real estate agent that has a listing in SLS Lux. Well, if you have a listing here, you want to know what's going on in the building, right? So that's why we have this subscribe feature. So whenever there's a new sale in the building, on market or off market, you'll get an email notification about that sale. That's very important. If you have a 2-bedroom sale, 2-bedroom listing in SLS Lux, let's say there's an off-market sale for a 2-bedroom, and you get that data. Oh, and that was at a higher price per square foot than your listing. You want to tell that to your client and show them that, hey, this is a good bargain for you to buy this. So that concludes the overview page. And the next page is called the building profile. And here we're looking at the existing supply in the building. So we're looking at the unit counts breakdown by the unit line or the number of bedrooms or the specific unit mix, like a 1-bedroom, 2-bathroom, in this case, 0 half bathrooms. This page in particular is extremely useful for developers. They want to see the existing supply in the market. They can see, okay, how many 2-bedrooms are in the market already. It looks like there's maybe in this particular case there's a lot of 1-bedrooms. Okay, so maybe because the supply of 1-bedrooms is so high, maybe we should focus on developing 2-bedrooms or 3-bedrooms. This is so important for helping them determine what's the appropriate unit mix for our building. So they can look at the supply side, and then later they can look at the demand side by looking at the actual sales, because maybe there's a lot of 1-bedrooms in the market that in the supply, but maybe when we look at the sales, the 1-bedrooms perform better on average than all the rest. So maybe it still makes sense to develop more 1-bedrooms. And that also depends on, the market. Brickell, for example, is a market where a lot of single professionals live, single high earners. So that's another reason why 1-bedrooms are more in demand, for example.
Yeah, this is so interesting. I love how, I've never kind of thought in this perspective of how these developers are thinking about the type of units that they're putting in and the size of them. And as you said, looking at the previous sales history, understanding a little bit about the economics too, what's kind of going on and in the market and who's living in these units. is important too. And just this bird's eye view is probably so useful for a developer to start to hone in on what they should be developing.
Absolutely. Yeah. So another very interesting feature is you'll see the top three owners in the building. This is important. It can be important for a lead generation standpoint. You know, if there's a top owner in SLS Lux and you have a similar listing in another building, that's something that you can pick up the phone, call them, and you can start a conversation with. But I would say more importantly, there's some, for example, some lenders in Miami, or maybe it's a Florida thing, where they'll have difficulty underwriting a loan to someone for a building where more than 10% is owned by the same entity or individual.
Oh,
So here we don't have that problem, but in certain buildings, one owner will own more than 10%, and then that of course has implications in financing. And this is all very important for the realtor to be able to see easily, because if you're representing someone on the buyer side, you're going to be browsing in different buildings, right?
mhm.
And seeing that easily can be a good way to immediately disqualify a building and move on to the next one, and thereby saving you and your client a lot of time and headache. So that is the building profile page. And here's the sales page where we're looking more on the demand side. So, you know, how are the different units selling? How are they performing, etc. Here's a sales browser, which allows you to browse all the sales since the dawn of time, or specifically when the building was constructed. And you'll see the buyer and the seller. Here's the developer. So this is great. Instead of, you know, poking through Miami-Dade property records, which takes a long time for, I mean, this building has like 500 units. So you'd have to put in each folio number, look at all the sales data for that particular unit. Imagine doing that 500 times. Okay, great.
Wow.
You've done one building. Now you got to do another one. You can tell how tedious that would be. And, you know, I know from a first-hand experience because that's what I was doing. And that's why this is, I think, so important, because it really speeds up your workflow if you have these problems.
Super powerful. Yeah, that you're aggregating this information and within an instant, this could be acquired versus having to sort probably for hours to gather all of this information.
Exactly. And then trying to disqualify certain sales that are, for example, multi-parcel or minimum consideration. Here, you'll just have the sales immediately, which is great. So all the graphs here can be filtered because this is time series data. So currently we're looking at the last 1 year. You can look at the last 3 years, 5 years, even all time. And so, for example, 5 years, you'll see the average price change. This is, for example, if a certain unit in the period has traded more than once, that's a price change. So on average, you know, studios seem to be appreciating, I guess. I'm not sure you can fully say that, but they're increasing in price by a lot in the past 5 years. So the idea behind these graphs is all about, you know, allowing the realtor to poke around and find demand generators for the client. So going back to my previous example, this agent has a listing in SLS Lux. It's a studio listing. You know, if they look at 5 years here, this is something they can show their client. Hey, look, studio condos here have appreciated like the most compared to the other types of bedrooms. So that's another incentive for you to get in on this good investment, you know? So yeah, you can look at the time series data, which is extremely important. You can even filter as close as the last 6 months, which in a market that's so fast-paced as Miami is very interesting to look at as well. And you'll also be able to see the price per square foot broken down by the floor and the unit line, which is super interesting. I haven't really found any other software that does this analysis on the unit line and floor this way. So I think this is a really interesting feature that we offer. And for the fourth and final tab, here you can see the top buyers and the top sellers for the selected period. And this is super interesting from the lead generation perspective. because when looking at different buildings, you'll be able to see certain patterns and trends. Certain entities or individuals are top buyers in similar buildings in the same market. When you realize that, you can kind of get an idea of who the big players are in the market. And if you have a listing that fits their appetite, you can call them up and say, hey, I've gone through your entire condo history. I know what you like, and I have something that might interest you. So it's all about facilitating, of course, procuring new condo deals as a core part of Condo Cube. And so to give you more of an example, let me open up one of these, because when you click on them, these profiles, you'll see a profile of all their whole condo purchase activity. Let me see if I can find a better example here. Let's see. So this Charles W. Bishop Trust, you can see the buildings that they're active in, and this is their
Wow.
entire condo purchase and sales history. So even when you look at the sales, you can even see the price change. In this case, they made a good profit in the Marquise Residences and in SLS Lux. From that alone, you can get an idea of who this buyer is. So they're around the 2.7 to 3.5 million price point. If you have a listing that falls in between that interval, I would call them up.
Yeah.
I've gone through your entire condo sales history. I see you made a pretty good profit on your last investment in SLS Lux. I happen to have a listing that fits your price range in the SLS Lux. I know you like the building because you made such a good deal on it. That's a great way to start a conversation. Also, you'll be able to tell them, hey, were you aware that in the past 5 years, you're the top second seller in the SLS Lux? I feel like that's something that as a real estate investor, not a lot of people are going to tell you that,
Yeah.
but it's certainly very nice to hear, a great way to start a conversation and a relationship, of course.
I love this part of the data, how you're empowering, again, like the agent and this aspect and the lead side to know more about the person that they're speaking to and provide even more value by doing so. So this is really valuable. And prior to this, when you were doing this on a more manual approach, when you worked for these companies that were agent facing for condos, was this something that you would put together manually, or how did you know to provide this outlook as well?
So this was actually not something that I did in my analyst days. This is something that I realized when I had the data and I was doing all this other stuff for Condo Cube. I realized that, wow, I can actually put together these profiles for the buyers and the sellers, which, of course, for this one entity, it would take a significant amount of time. And you
Yeah,
need to do that on such a large scale. It's very time consuming, but it's repetitive, so it's able to be automated. And that's where I was like, okay, this is something that's very interesting and a good product to add on to the platform. So it's an idea that I got from basically looking at the data I already had.
that's so cool. And I find that a lot when you start to dig into data for one aspect, then you can start exploring others. I had used Apartments List. They have like rental information for free that they publish. And then
Mm-hmm.
found as I was digging through their data, they had like vacancy as well, down to like the city levels. So yeah, I love that you dug through the data and then tried to get creative as to how else you could best help your clients with providing more information.
Yeah, and I guess that's also something I want to add is a great selling point into learning how to program, because it's really enabled me to be very creative. And I've been a person that I've always had a lot of ideas, but the execution part is always hard. Knowing how to program has definitely helped me execute a lot of ideas that I have, because it's at a certain point when you learn how to code, there's really no limit to putting your ideas into reality if
Yeah.
they can be software essentially. So yeah, learning how to program has really allowed me to take a lot of these ideas I previously had as an analyst, and I was like, oh, this would be great if this existed, and actually create it.
Yeah. Please let me know. Like you created this from beginning to end, like the user interface that we're seeing now, that was you as well as the data aspect.
Absolutely. Everything.
That is what you call, folks, full stack development. And it's a great skill set to have because not just analyzing data, but then you can actually put it into tools that are readily available for others to use. I'm just curious, what packages do you use for creating this? Like, do you use Flask and Python for your app?
Right. So this is ran on a Python backend that's using the Django framework,
Nice.
and the front end is running on React, which is one of the most popular frameworks for developing UI. Cannot recommend it enough. It has its issues for sure, but if once you learn it, you'll be able to create very nice interfaces super quickly, which is what I'm all about. I'm not a designer or anything. I just want to get something nice out there and get it out quick and
Yeah,
have it scalable. And that's exactly what React allows me to do.
amazing. And for someone who wanted to use your software for maybe an agent or a developer, is this something that's live today that they could use?
Yes, absolutely. They can go to my landing page and sign up. They can also, without creating an account, you'll be able to view all the buildings, but a lot of the features will be blurred out. Some data will be available to you as a sort of teaser. Um, and then once you actually get a subscription, everything will be unlocked for you. So this is available today. Before getting more into that, there's one more feature I want to highlight.
Let's
It's
check it
just
out.
super cool that I definitely cannot miss showing it. So everything I showed you thus far can be done on a multi-building level. So going back to my frustrations as an analyst, I was doing these reports not only for one building, but for multiple buildings. Imagine working with a developer, you put together a report, feasibility study for four condo buildings in Brickell. You know, let's say the average unit count is 500 units. That alone takes a lot of time just to get the data, run the analysis, clean it up, analyze it, make sure it looks good, etc. Now imagine the developer gives you a rebuttal like, okay, this is nice, but actually take out this building, add two of these new buildings. You know, like you're back to the drawing board essentially
Yeah.
because it takes so long. So the ability to dynamically analyze multiple buildings and compare them side to side was a very big goal in developing this. And that's why you can select multiple buildings
Wow.
and you can compare as many as you'd like, although I definitely don't recommend comparing more than 4 at a time. So let's do that. So here I have all the 4 buildings I selected, and if you want to disable them temporarily, you can toggle them like this. But basically, the whole Condo Cube platform, you can compare these buildings side by side. This is super useful, you know, as an agent, you're never going to have just one condo building that's your option. Your client is going to be like, I want to live in this building. Oh, this building has a nice pool. Oh, this building, I feel like it's facing the water. It could be a good appreciation in the future. Okay, so sit down with your client, you know, show them this software that you have dedicated to condo investments. Have them select the buildings that they want, and then you can easily compare them side by side, you know?
Wow.
Okay, what's making up the 1-bedroom sales in Brick or Arch? Okay, I see. That's why. So you can sit there with your client and, you know, easily go through all these buildings at once at such a fast pace. And this extends far beyond, of course, the rest of the agents. For developers, this is a game changer. For developers, especially, you're always looking at multiple buildings. You're doing these feasibility studies, looking at the existing supply in the market. This page, right? Well, here you can analyze the supply, in different buildings side by side, quickly shift over to the demand side, look at the demand side by side as well. So just from a feasibility study standpoint for developers, this saves so much time.
Amazing. Mind blown. I mean, not just analyzing one property at a time, but the fact that you can compare them multiple at a time and look at them head to head is such valuable information, and really exciting that you were able to create this. Was this another one of your ideas, or just kind of like seeing what pain points users had and then from there developing it?
This is an idea that when I demoed the software to one of my customers, basically they said, this, this is cool. Is there any way to show this with a side-by-side analysis of different buildings, maybe 2 buildings? I was like, yeah, absolutely. That's actually a great suggestion. And I put it in.
Yeah, that's why
So
it's so huge, as well as for others listening that want to one day have their own companies too and develop products for users, is just talking to users. Like, you may think what they may want, what types of solutions, but until you're having those calls, walking through your product, you're not going to possibly solve their solution in the best way. So if you could detail that a little bit more of the startup program that you're in and how that's helped as you've continued to develop Condo Cube.
yeah, absolutely. So Condo Cube was accepted in January into Founder University, which is a pre-accelerator program by Launch, a VC that's invested in most notably Uber and Robinhood early stage. So a very interesting program to be a part of, and has been super beneficial to me as well. I have to give a shout out to Ariel and her co-founder Liam, because you are actually the people that got me into the program and recommended it for me in the first place. So can't thank you enough for that, because it's been so much fun to be in it, and I've learned a lot. But basically, it's a program where every week they go through different topics and taking an idea from concept until getting your first customers and pitching to VCs. When I joined the program, I had already launched Condo Cube, so I was worried a lot of the stuff would be, wasted on me, because developing an MVP and all that I'd already done, so to speak. It was still very useful, and I thought I would just snooze through those lectures, but I actually did pay a lot of attention, because it was just such useful information that I honestly wish I would have had available to me when I was actually in that stage. Another great benefit of the program is the networking. It's connected me with a lot of other founders in the PropTech space in Miami and South Florida, and they've been able to give me some feedback on the product and help me pivot a bit, feature suggestions, and it's just nice to have people in the similar space that you can also just vent your frustrations with and co-develop solutions with. So hugely beneficial program.
Excellent. Love to hear it. And with that, Gustaf, if you could detail how someone could use your product today, and then maybe for those who are just interested to learn or follow your journey as you continue and maybe expand into their markets, how would they do so?
You can register for an account and basically choose a subscription that fits your needs. There's 3 different tiers. And before subscribing, you can basically go through the freemium version to look at some of the data and kind of get an idea of how it is working in the interface, because the interface is the same no matter if you're paying or not. It's just that the data showing is different. So you can already get acclimatized in how you can use this in your workflow without even paying a cent. So yeah, it's very easy to register and subscribe. And let's say if you're working in California and you want to follow the progress in this, first of all, realtors work a lot on referrals. So you never know, maybe there's a lot of people leaving California, moving to Texas and Florida. Maybe one of your existing clients has that idea as well. And maybe you can work in a referral with a local Miami realtor, this software could still be beneficial for you, of course. But if you just want to follow the progress and see when it's available in California or any other market, best place is to connect or follow me on LinkedIn. That's where I post the most updates. And yeah, I guess I'll send you the link, Ariel, and you'll have it ready in the description or wherever this is hosted, so they can click on that.
Yes,
And
it'll be available in the show notes. And thank you so much for your time, Gustaf. I've learned an incredible deal walking through your product as well as how you're solving the problems that Miami condo developers as well as agents face today, and super excited to continue following your journey.
thank you for the nice words. I appreciate it. And it's been really fun sharing this with you here.
Awesome. Thanks.